Hey Dale. So thanks again for asking me for my advice. I'll give I'll convey whatever wisdom I can with my limited experience in the martial arts. So I'm going to start with your question on remaining mentally and physically flexible. So in the literal sense, if we're looking at the physical sense of flexibility, I would be remiss if I did not say that mobility trumps flexibility every time, period. So what's the difference between mobility and flexibility? Mobility is your ability to control a limb or your body through a specific range of motion. Flexibility is the ability of a limb or your body to move in a range of motion, but not necessarily under your control. So if we take somebody who's not very mobile, but very flexible, they can move around a little bit, but if you, hypothetically, if you grab their leg, you can lift it over their head, but they couldn't do it themselves. And the more flexible somebody is, and the less mobile they are, the more prone they are to injury. And to give you an example, I mentioned this before, I'm a two-time junior Olympic gold medalist in Taekwondo. When I was on the junior Olympic team, I was the number 2 person on the team, brought home 2 gold medals, and I was the least flexible person on the team. Couldn't do splits to save my life, not even close. I guarantee you, I am just as flexible now, if not more so, than I was back then, and I was still able to do it. Flexibility tends to be very activity specific, and in my opinion, unless you're rehabbing an injury, or if you're trying to gain a little bit more range of motion for a given technique, you really don't even need to work on it. I would recommend mobility over flexibility. Mobility will keep you young. It will prevent injuries. And additionally, it's a fantastic rehab tool if you ever do get injured. So I would recommend something called the Original Strength System by Tim Anderson. He has a YouTube channel where he has a ton of free video clips. There's a couple books you can find on Amazon for pretty cheap. I think maybe at most $15. I want to say they're about $10. Honestly, you just need I think it's called Original Strength Reloaded, if I'm not mistaken. I'll post a link to it in the video description. But those are my thoughts on mobility and flexibility from a physical standpoint. From a mental standpoint, to remain mentally flexible and to essentially be able to grow as a martial artist throughout the years where you're not really stagnating, there's 2 things you really need to do. The first is, in training, put yourself into bad situations. By doing that repeatedly, you know what? It's going to look like you suck in training, and that's okay. Because you're going to develop a much higher sense of skill, because you're learning how to get out of really bad situations. If you're putting yourself in optimal situations in training, almost anybody can get out of that, even an unskilled person if they're just using their head. By putting yourself in a bad situation, you not only need to use your head, you need to fall back on whatever skills you've developed, your attributes you've developed, and you need to combine all 3 in a pretty intelligent way in order to get out of that situation. Easy situations, you need at most one of those given attributes. Make sure you really, really put yourself in those bad situations so you figure out how to get out of them. And just remember, training is just learning how to die less often. That's all it is. Good training, you know what, you're going to lose a decent amount. You'll figure out ways out of it. Once that whatever situation you put yourself in becomes easier, change up the situation or make it harder, put a different variable in there. The second thing you really need to do, in my opinion, is to spar and cross-train with individuals outside of your system once you have a good degree of skill and knowledge in your given system or systems that you practice. This will teach you to think outside the box. You're exposed to different cultures, different methods of solving a given problem, etc. And plus, if you're sparring with them, I believe it was Martin Wheeler who first told me, you only get so good sparring people in your own system. By sparring people outside of it, by playing with them, rolling with them, striking with them, what have you, you will find very quickly that different people from different arts move and problem solve very differently. And this is super, super important. You might like how they do things, you might not. You might find certain systems easier to counter than others. But by being exposed to their methods of problem solving, because they're trying to solve you while you're trying to solve them. Just remember, that's all fighting is high speed, high pressure problem solving. That's it. Putting it bluntly, a lot of people try to make it very mystical. It's high speed, high pressure problem solving. If they're trying to solve the problem that is you and you're trying to solve the problem that is them, and you both have two very different methods of solving that problem, different frameworks, you'll learn a lot. You'll learn a lot. Just one word of caution. Be very wary of anybody who really stresses that their method of problem solving is the way or the one way. There's no such thing. Different arts, like I mentioned repeatedly, have different methods of solving a problem. Let's take Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, for instance. I love Jiu-Jitsu. I really do. I think everybody out there, it's probably the second best system to cross-train in the entire world, in my opinion. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is effective in all use of force spectrums, meaning I'm trying to avoid the problem. I'm trying to win the fight without hurting anybody. Win the fight, maybe hurt them a little bit, hurt them a lot, and God forbid, even kill someone. Jiu-Jitsu is effective in all of those. I don't know of any art that is as effective as Jiu-Jitsu in all of those use of force spectrums, period. Does it mean Jiu-Jitsu is the greatest art? In my opinion, no, I don't think there really is such a thing. And Jiu-Jitsu is fantastic in those use of force spectrums, but what happens if there's more than one person? Or God forbid, there's a weapon. If the second a weapon comes into play, Jiu-Jitsu changes completely. Completely different method of solving a problem. It starts to look more like Kali or Silat. And having been around the martial arts block now for 28 years, I've seen very, very, very acclaimed Jiu-Jitsu practitioners and masters try to teach their version of weapon self-defense. We're talking 4th and 5th degree black belts, where you had a completely untrained person with a rubber knife absolutely just tool them up. This completely untrained person has never seen or done anything before. Everybody just told him, okay, just rush in, try and stab him, don't let him do anything. This 5th degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu had no answer to this. He was bigger and stronger than this other individual too. Now add in multiple people, multiple weapons. How is Jiu-Jitsu going to counter that? The answer is it can't. Does it mean it's a bad system? No. It's fantastic at, again, one-on-one altercations, and ideally without a weapon. And that's, for most social violence, that's well over 95% of all altercations. It's a fantastic system. But my point is, if you don't cross-train in a system, if you're a jiu-jitsu practitioner, if you do not cross-train in a system that teaches you how to solve these problems, you're shooting yourself in the foot as a martial artist, and you need to expand your horizons and cross-train in a system that will teach you this. So this is it for video 1. Just wanted to go through flexibility and mobility from a both mental and physical standpoint. If I didn't touch on something, if there's a bit of miscommunication, let me know, and I can always shoot another video. Take care.